Hello, I'm Sheryl McCarthy of the City University of New York. Welcome to One to One. Each week, we address issues of timely and timeless concern with newsmakers and the journalists who report on them, with writers, artists, scientists, educators, social scientists, and government leaders. We meet each one to one. I'm delighted to welcome Amy Winter, the director and curator of the Godwin-Ternbach Museum at Queens College. It's not only a treasure trove of art, but a source of inspiration for the community and the city. And unlike most museums in the city, the admission is free. Welcome.
Thank you.
In a city that's filled with hundreds of museums, why does a college or university need its own museum?
Well, a college and university museum is really devoted to allowing students, and in some cases the public, but mostly the students, to handle the art very directly and to examine it and to learn what it's like to work with an object rather than to just look at it.
In a book.
Exactly, in a book or on a screen, projected. And it's a very different experience and a very profound experience. In handling objects, students can learn about the properties of the object. They can learn about the craftsmanship. They can be closer to history, I think, in that interaction. Tell
me about the origins of your museum. I mean, my understanding is it started with basically a teaching collection back in the 50s.
Correct. It accumulated over the years from friends and alumni. There are one or two objects in the collection that are not donations, that were acquired, but also by purchase funds of friends of the library. Since 1959, the collection was established in 59, but in 81 it was established as a museum, the Godwin-Ternbach Museum, by two individuals, one an art historian, Francine Godwin, and the other Joseph Ternbach, a restorer of great note, who was the father of Francine's student, Inga Ternbach. And together they forged the museum and turned it into a professional museum that, rather than just a collection, the collection had been administrated by the art library, which did a wonderful job of cataloging and inventorying, but there are many more aspects to running a museum than simply registering the objects.
And becoming a museum, it started to, put on exhibitions with items not only from your collection, but also borrowed items, correct?
Yes, I've expanded that. The idea was initially to stay with the collection itself as a teaching collection, but in these times, we need to raise funds, and we need to go out and interact with the community more, get the community involved. And so I have expanded the exhibitions that are external. I balance it between the collection itself and special exhibitions.
Now, you have a permanent collection of more than 3,500 objects. Do they tend to be concentrated in certain areas, or is it eclectic?
It was very eclectic. Since I've been there, we've been able to get a little more focus. I mean, when you have a collection that doesn't have funds for purchase, when everything is donated to you, you really can't have as much of a focus,
right,
or any focus at all.
Right.
But since I've been there, and due to the inspiration of the chair of my advisory board, we have gone in a direction of looking more for pre-Columbian objects and building that collection. Our print collection is really very good, and I've assessed the collection to note that it's not first generation New York School paintings and prints, but we have a very, very wonderful group of prints that go over the generations of the New York School. So I look for notable New York school artists of, even into the contemporary area. We're not as strong yet in contemporary as we have more what I call modernist style things. I mean, we do have many post-war prints. For instance, a whole suite, 2 suites of Andy Warhol prints, and that really I see as more contemporary than modern. That's the break-off point.
Right. Mm-hmm. But you also have, I was from your website, a Kandinsky.
Oh yeah.
A Picasso.
Yes.
And going way back, you have a Dürer print.
Yes. Our Christmas card this year, one of our Dürers. We have a number of real Dürers.
And among the donors, I mean, there's been a lot of interaction with immigrants, European immigrants, and I guess, people who came fleeing from what was going on, the Nazis and everything that was in the war. That seems to be a theme among people who have donated to the museum.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that was the focus of the theme, but the theme of the people who were the major donors, although it is changing now, it's much more diverse. But there was that level of people who did come in the 30s and even the 20s. And Queens was a very large community of immigrants and Jewish people. And in fact, I wrote my dissertation on someone who was an exile from Vienna and Berlin. Mm-hmm. So it's a good match. Nowadays, as I say, it's much more diverse, but that history of culture of that group that came, they were very educated and very highly cultured. So it really established a very solid foundation for the school and the museum.
What are some of your favorite items in the collection?
Well, I am very Catholic in my tastes, I must say. But I guess if I were to choose an item, it would be, this is hard.
It's like a mother choosing among her children.
I know, it really is. It really is. And also, because I have 3 degrees in the history of art, I'm very familiar with a lot of things, and I really like a lot of things. I guess if I had to choose, I know we have a wonderful portfolio called Natural History, Histoire Naturelle, by Max Ernst, and that's my area of interest is Surrealism and Dada and Surrealism. And they're very playful and they're very wonderful. It's a suite of prints. I think there must be somewhere near 25 prints. Mm-hmm. And they are very creative because he used natural materials. He did rubbings and transformed the real world into a playful and strange and surreal world. With great mastery.
Now he is, I hope I don't show my ignorance, he is an American artist, right?
Max Ernst? No.
Yeah. No?
Okay. Max Ernst is a German artist who was participated in the Dada movement in the 19-teens and then went to Paris and joined the Dada movement, which became the Surrealist movement. And then he fled during the war himself. He first was interned in France as an enemy because he was German, mm-hmm. and then he married Peggy Guggenheim and came to the United States, to New York.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of him as an immigrant.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
But he's classified still as a French, actually, artist.
Really?
He got French citizenship.
Okay.
A lot of Germans gave up their citizenship.
How many exhibits do you do a year?
It varies. I keep trying to do less because of the intensity of putting together a good exhibition that can be used by students and that can really draw the public. About 3 was what I was doing, 1 each semester and then 1 in the summer. But as the college's schedules and demands change, I move with it. So for instance, this year I'm doing 4 shows.
Right.
But going forward, I hope to really go back to
3.
To 3 or even 2. We're coming up on a major renovation, that also will take away perhaps the summer.
I was looking at some of your recent exhibits. A work of the WPA artists during the Depression, peace quilts from around the world, meditation in contemporary Chinese landscapes, photographs of reviled categories of mothers crossing the boulevard, a multimedia exhibit on the lives of recent immigrants to Queens, and spirit and power in African art. Where did the ideas for these exhibits come from?
Well, in some cases they were guest curated shows like Crossing the Boulevard, and Beggars and Choosers was the name of the documentary photography show about women and children on the margins struggling. But the African art show came out of our collection with also loans from friends, collectors, and pieces from other museums, but mostly from our collection. And the Peace Quilt show was done by Ricky Asher, Dr. Ricky Asher, who's the head of art education
at Queens.
And she's been going to India and working with young women, teens, in a vocational school in southern India. I believe it's southern Pardati Educational Society, as well as upstate societies that are involved with helping and training young women. And the peace quilts were made by them, by the girls.
Okay.
So it's a mixture of
generated, perhaps scholars at the college or outside people.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Right. In the case of the African art show, we don't yet have an African art major, but other shows that we do with professors, for instance, we're coming up on a show of Renaissance art with Jim Saslow, who also teaches.
Let's talk about. I want to talk about that after the break.
Okay.
We'll be back with Amy Winter, the director and curator of the Godwin-Ternbach Museum, in just a minute.
Say, are you worried about H1N1? Swine flu. Well, CUNY says protect yourself from hidden horrors. Here's how. After touching public surfaces, don't touch your eyes, nose, or mouth. Flu is also spread when infected people cough at you. Sneeze into a tissue, never your bare hands, or use your elbow. Wash often with soap and water, or use an alcohol-based hand cleanser. There are 2 kinds of flu shots this season. Consult your doctor or healthcare provider on the regular and H1N1 vaccinations. Most importantly, if you feel sick and have fever, stay home. Yes, a little caution goes a long way.
For more information, visit our website, cuny.edu, and click on H1N1 Update.
Hey guys, this is my teenage friend Rachel. She's cool.
Hey. Hey, could you watch the road?
Hey, could you watch the road?
Okay. All right, well, if we die in a car crash, I want to donate my eyes to my neighbor Gary. He has a boat, and he sails all around the world. I would love to see that. I don't know if he actually needs eyes, but who would turn on a free pair of eyes, right? Who's that rich?
Welcome back to One to One. I'm Sheryl McCarthy at the City University of New York, and I'm talking with Amy Winter, the director and curator of the Godwin-Ternbach Museum at Queens College. Before the break, we were talking about how these exhibits come to be.
Mm-hmm. Well, whether they come from the collection or if I draw from outside and have guest curators, I do it with the community in mind, whether it is the college community and the needs of the academic needs of the college, or the larger community and particularly the diversity of the Queens community. Thus, Crossing the Boulevard, which spoke to the emigre experience on many different levels.
Right, right. Do people come to you with a proposal? Is that how it works for an exhibit, and some board or somebody decides what you want to go with?
Yes. Often that when it's an external, a special exhibition from outside, yes, somebody will approach me with a proposal. Another show we did, also by a photojournalist, Barbara Grover, was sent to me by the head of Jewish Studies, Dr. Mark Rosenblum, who knew this person's work. He's been traveling back and forth to the Middle East, been very involved in the peace movement and in trying to find ways to develop a rapport between Israelis and Palestinians. And on campus, he's transposed that to be wonderful interaction between Muslim and Jewish students, and also involving people from the community at large, high school students, seniors, symposia.
And what was the exhibit again?
I'm sorry, it was called This Land to Me.
Okay.
It was life-size, over life-size photographs of 6 Palestinians and 6 Israelis that also had narratives next to the photographs, talking about their feelings about what the land, Israel, Palestine, meant to them. Yeah. And
what's been the most popular exhibit?
I think the most popular. It seems like we're building in interest as we go along, but I think the Fabric of Cultures may have been the one that reached the most people, both in terms of the students on campus, but also the community. It showed works, costumes from the Queens College Art Collection, which is a separate collection, which also has been developing over the years from donations. And Elizabeth Lowe is the head of the Department of Fitness, Nutrition, and Exercise Sciences, a specialist in costume history and sociology. And so we, with Eugenia Policelli, who also teaches here at the Graduate Center, put together. It was really Eugenia's brainstorm to look at costume, look at fashion in a way that examined how we dress defines our identity, or how our identity is defined by what we wear. And so we juxtaposed Western and ethnic costumes, and one of my interests and emphases was to, we were 4 of us were curators: Eugenia, Elizabeth Lowe, Julia Sharp, who's a textile expert, and me. And one of my emphases was to look at the influence of ethnic dress on Western dress, and how it enriched it. But I'm also very interested in the richness of ethnic textiles. And
now, who pays for the exhibits?
Well, I have to raise funds. That particular exhibit was funded by a costume and textile-focused foundation that I approached, and I can't remember the name of the foundation either. But at the moment, but I send out proposals for every show, whether it's to private foundations or to public foundations. The DCA, the Department of Cultural Affairs, has been a mainstay
of the city,
and it's been fabulous. The President's Office helps me. Also, I report directly to the President's Office, and they are very supportive, and I could not do anything with that.
Financially, they're supportive.
Very financially,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Very. I mean, not entirely. I also have to. My board advisory board it's not a fiduciary board, but my board also contributes, and particularly the chair of my board, Georgia de Havilland, is really another mainstay and support both financially and morally, and also rolling up her sleeves and coming in and working.
Who are your constituents? Who comes to the exhibits?
Well, we've been building over the years and developing our constituency among the classes across the board, not just art classes, and this was something that I really felt we needed to do. We have interns that handle the objects. We have a museum studies class, but we're getting visits from English, comparative lit, anthropology for our Andean textile show that we just had in the fall. Even mathematics, because the Andean textiles are quite amazing geometrically. Art, of course, the art classes. Education, a lot of education classes.
And outside of the college, I mean, is it the Queens and Long Island?
Yes, it's really Queens and Long Island. A lot of seniors come, and then whatever group has been targeted, whatever special interest group has been targeted. And for instance, the Spanish community, Hispanic community, there was, and the African American community, there was interest in those shows that drew people in.
Now, I know, obviously, MoMA has the, PS1 in Long Island City, but is your museum one of the bigger museums in Queens?
It's the only museum.
It is the only museum in Queens?
Yes, it is the only museum in Queens with a major collection, or a real collection. There are other museums, I should say, there are other museums that are special interest museums. For instance, at Queens itself, there's a museum of anthropology that was initially dedicated to Armenian culture, but we are the only art museum in Queens.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's no charge for admission.
It's free.
Is that typical of a college or university type museum, or is it unique?
It's typical.
Okay.
Because it's
well, certainly you want to be open to students.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's founded on the idea of educational access for all.
You to tell us about the 2 upcoming exhibits before we go.
Okay. All right. We're going to do a show with James Zaslow, a professor of Renaissance art and also Renaissance studies in theater here at the Graduate Center. Which is called Scholars, Explorers, Priests, How the Renaissance Gave Us the Modern World. And it's totally out of the collection. It's prints, paintings, small bronzes, stone sculpture, across the board in terms of media, and it will cover the Renaissance and the Baroque periods. And it looks at the beginning of modern thought and modern attitudes in that period. And then the next show we're doing is a special exhibition with a colleague of mine who has discovered and written about Dali, Salvador Dali's
influence on dance.
Influence on dance, his work in dance with major choreographers, George Balanchine and Leonid Massine. And he was, as everyone knows, a very theatrical artist. And so he really lays the foundations in that also for performance art, and works with popular culture a great deal. Although the photographs in the show will really be archival photographs of those historic performances.
Coming up in the spring.
In the spring. Thank you.
I'm certainly going to try to get to see them, especially since I'm right there.
I'd like that.
So much more I wanted to talk to you about, but we're out of time.
Right.
But I want to thank Amy Winter for joining us. The Godwin-Ternbach Museum is open Monday through Thursday from 11 to 7 and Saturdays from 11 to 5. For more information about the museum, check out the website shown on your screen. For the City University of New York and 1 to 1, I'm Sheryl McCarthy.